Newt Gingrich is with us, former Speaker of the House. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I think what you're doing tonight is what the president should do for the whole country. I think they should invite every family who has lost a loved one to an illegal immigrant to come to Washington, to the White House, have a meeting, and then go up on Capitol Hill and confront directly these people who claim that the death of their loved one is manufactured. I think nothing would shrink the Democratic Party faster than to confront the families who have a legitimate personal experience that the country is not secure and that, in fact, Americans have been killed, they have been raped, they have been robbed. In some cases, they have been tortured by MS-13 gang members. All of these people who are here illegally.
Well, I mean, this is the point. Why do you think that they've taken on this tact that somehow, and just look at the last 2 weeks. I mean, one of the families we're going to have a member of Officer Singh's family is going to be on the show tonight, and another family, a mom and dad, on December 29th last year, just a few weeks ago, they lost their son, Pierce Corcoran. He was hit by an illegal immigrant that was apparently on drugs or drinking and driving on the wrong side of the road. He's dead. Democrats thought it was a crisis when there was family separation, which had happened in the previous two administrations. They thought it was a crisis when our Border Patrol was being pelted with rocks and bottles, and to defend themselves, they used tear gas. The media was screaming that, quote, our ICE officials are gassing children. They thought that was a crisis. Well, this is permanent separation. These are mothers and fathers that don't ever get to see their kids again.
Well, look, I think there are a couple of things going on. First of all, a large part of the Democratic Party cares more about the fate of people who are not legally here than they care about Americans. Let's just be honest. Their bias is, if you're an American citizen, why should they worry about you? You're not their constituency. You're not who they're emotionally attached to. They're more concerned about the treatment of a 6-year-old or a 9-year-old at the border than they are about the death of an American from an illegal immigrant. And I think that's just a deep bias of the Democratic Party that has grown stronger over the last 30 years. I think, second, you have a lot of Democrats who are for open borders. The new governor of California, who represents sort of a California crazy ideology, has called for not just a sanctuary state, but for California to be a sanctuary state with free medical care for everyone, specifically including illegal immigrants. So Governor Newsom is going to make California the magnet for the world. If you need medical care, go to California. They'll give it to you for free.
Well, also you can go to New York City. So, and I would like to remind everybody that, yeah, Gavin Newsom has promised free health care for everybody, including illegal immigrants. If you need health care, all you really need is to get in your car or jump on an airplane and go out. Gavin Newsom said it's going to be free. So why not do it?
Yeah. And I think it's the same open borders. After all, why should we think being American is special? And I think it's a deep behavior now, almost an illness in the Democratic Party. And then the other part of the Democratic Party, of course, just hates Trump. And they don't want Trump to have a victory under any circumstance. And so you end up with sort of a bitter end oppositionism. When the president said to Speaker Pelosi, if we'll reopen the government and do everything you want, could we in the next 30 days solve the problem of the border? And she said no. And then he said, well, why are we meeting? I'm out of here. And he was right. I mean, if their attitude is that there is nothing they're going to do that fits the commander-in-chief's interest, now I will say, I believe it'll be a mistake for him to use his executive power. I think this is an important moment in history, and I wrote my newsletter about this today. He should focus on winning this the country. I'm seeing Democrat after Democrat begin to weaken, and if he stays at it, you're president going to see enough Democrats split that, in fact, they're going to be able to pass something.
Well, here's what's happening. The same media that backs up the Democrats with the manufactured crisis line, the same media now is talking about this poor family has to sell their welding equipment, and this family is making cheesecakes just so they can pay their rent, and they're selling the cheesecakes to neighbors door to door. And, it is, and I feel sorry. Listen, at one point in my life, I lived, I was paycheck to paycheck for many years, actually, in my adult life. I know it's not fun when you don't have a lot of money in savings. And for a lot of these families, they don't have that money, and it is inconvenient. They will get all of the money back in time. But this is what's being played up in the media, but they don't put on the parents that lost their kids, and they only want to push the one side of the argument.
But also, if you feel sympathy for government employees who are not going to be paid for several weeks, although, as you pointed out, the Senate's already passed a bill that guarantees they will get all the money when this is over. They'll get paid the back pay. But if you feel sympathy, call Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be clear about this. It's in their power for a relatively small amount of money out of the total federal budget. It's in their power to work out an agreement with the commander-in-chief and have the government reopen tomorrow. So, this is not a one-sided thing. And I think that we have to have the courage to stand tough. I noticed that there's a great story out today that CNN was trying to find a local station in San Diego that would confirm its bias that walls don't matter, and they couldn't find one because all the local stations in San Diego were saying, of course they matter. They had a 90-something percent reduction.
Oh, and then you had another station. And you had another station that actually tried to paint the president, alter his look to make him more orange. I mean, there's fair media, and I've never seen it to this extent where it's this obvious and this transparent. But when they came out and we were kind of watching the SNL opening skit with Nancy and Chuck, and it was a really bad open. And I'm sitting there watching this train wreck, and they both used the word manufactured crisis, and that then was picked up by everybody in the media. I've never seen the alliance this tight, where it is the same verbiage, it is the same phrase, the exact same arguments.
They're the same people. Now, let's be clear. 90% of the news media is the Democratic Party. It's not like we ought to quit kidding ourselves. They're not the news media. They're the liberal propaganda arm of the Democratic Party. I mean, the New York Times or CBS News or CNN, they don't exist as news organizations. They're propaganda instruments.
Let me ask you this. All right, so you want the president to stay strong and keep the government shut down, the partial government shutdown, which represents about 25% of the workforce for the government. All right. Then all these stories, furloughed, pain, misery, it's all going to be put on Donald Trump's lap, which is their emotional appeal, ignoring the families that are permanently separated and lost loved ones because of illegal immigration. So, but the point is, the president seems to be laying the groundwork to declare a national emergency. Why would you not go along with that strategy when it is, according to every legal expert that matters that I've consulted, they all agree it's a slam dunk. Many Democrats agree it's a slam dunk.
Okay, it's a slam dunk. You could have done it 3 months ago. And my question is really simple. We now have a genuine crisis of government. We have a collision between the new Democratic House and the President of the United States. And the truth is that Chuck Schumer now is just, he's the tail on Nancy Pelosi's machine. He's trotting along behind Pelosi, and she's leading the way. Sooner or later, the president's going to have to win a collision with the Democratic House. The sooner he does it, the better. If he sidesteps this fight right now and is clever and uses, a nice legal device, we're still going to come right back to a collision. If, on the other hand, he can raise the ante enough that marginal Democrats go in and say, I can't take the heat, we're going to have to solve this. At some point, he will force the Democrats to start to learn that a president of the United States who has the power of the veto can, in fact, impose very substantial costs on a left-wing radical House of Representatives. But I think for him to be clever right now, and he may well be legally able to do it, I just think that in the long-term government of the United States, it's not a good solution, and it will lead the Democratic House to cut the budget of whatever institution he gets money out of.
Mm-hmm. All right, stay right there.
In the end, that's their answer.
We continue. Former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, is with us. All right, as we continue with former Speaker of the House, Newt Gingrich, you're urging the president to just stand strong. I think Mitch McConnell's hanging in there pretty strong. I know that I've interviewed Lindsey Graham and Kevin McCarthy. The House is strong, but I can see maybe a few senators, Lisa Murkowski, Mitt Romney, among them, start peeling away, and I'm sure the Democrats are working very hard on that part. So,
well, first of all, McConnell has said he won't bring up a bill the president's not going to sign. So as long as McConnell keeps his word, and he's up for re-election in 2020, and he knows that the most popular person in the Republican Party is President Donald Trump. So one, the Senate's a blocking place to start with. Two, the president's got the power of a veto. Now, to override a presidential veto on this issue is impossible. You couldn't do it in the House. You couldn't do it in the Senate. It takes 2/3 plus one. They'll never get that margin. So the president's in a position to try to teach the country a lesson, which is on this issue, the Congress has to negotiate, and the Democrats have to learn to negotiate. And that's why I'm very skeptical of sidestepping this fight. I think they need to turn up the heat. They need to make sure.
Have you talked to the president about this? Have you told the president this?
No, I only realized today how real this is getting, and I'm going to call him and talk to him about it, because I do think it would be a mistake to go down that road.
I think you should call him.
I think he's winning, and I think that he needs to recognize, and people like you are a big part of this. As the country looks at families who have had people killed by illegal immigrants, the whole manufactured line looks cynical and sick. And I think people begin to realize that these are people who are really pretty despicable to describe the killing of Americans as something which is manufactured, when in fact it's the tragic loss of life.
All right, Newt Gingrich, former Speaker of the House, thanks for being with us.